Yeah.
Little Jimi Hendrix there for you.
I like that. I like Jimi Hendrix Little Wing. I also like Stevie Ray Vaughan doing it as well.
Absolutely. Very cool.
Actually, Stevie Ray Vaughan, his version was just madness.
Yeah.
Crazy. I mean,
kind of like he did another remake. Stevie Ray Vaughan did another Hendrix song too.
Voodoo Child.
Voodoo Child.
Yeah. Flight Return. Yeah. Well, Voodoo Child, and I think he did all of them. Stevie Ray Vaughan was a huge Jimmy fan, right?
What a great blues guitarist.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. Yeah.
Miss both of you guys.
Actually, Voodoo Child could be a good song for the next episode on Digital Twin. What do you think?
This guy is funny.
I think it's good to have this connection between the song and the topics.
You're hilarious, man. So, hey, everyone. Welcome to IoT Coffee Talk. This week, we're going to be talking about business models, right? How to design what is a business model? And how do you build a business on one that's going to lend to success, I suppose, right?
Absolutely.
And we kind of started this topic last week when we were talking about projects, and Marc kept bringing this up, and so I don't know, Marc, you wanna kick stuff off here with the topic? Why don't I do this? Let me ask you. Why don't I ask both of you? What is a business model? Because I love this question, and just to make you guys nervous, people screw it up all the time. And they start doing the classic talking past each other. But, we love each other. We don't mind occasionally disagreeing with each other and educating each other. So let's have a little battle on that topic, that definition. So how do you guys see business models? What is a business model to you?
So, I think that the business model, it's one of the most important parts for a successful project. As I introduced, it needs to match expectations, first of all, to get a success project. But you need to build a successful business model behind your product. And it's important here to maybe separate if it's a B2B service or a B2B IoT project, or if it's a B2C device. Uh-huh. So for B2C device, we have a lot of different models. So I have like a table with all 90-something different business models and how. So a friend of mine made a PhD only matching all the business models with IoT. So what's the razor and blade business model for IoT, for example, and things like that. So razor and blade, the business model of the razor and blade.
Yes.
So I give you
studying the Osterwalder
razor and blade, and then you will need to buy the blade.
Yeah. It's the HP printer.
I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah.
You're right, but you're right. The printers, they followed the razor and blade model exactly. Give away the printer and then make the money on the toner cartridges, the ink cartridges. Yeah.
Or the video consoles, right?
Yeah.
Video game. With the video games, this is where they are making the money.
That's a great point. I know a lot of kids out there think, oh my God, the new Xbox or PlayStation is so expensive, but they have no idea how much more expensive it would actually be they charge you the full price for the technology you're getting. You're right. They know they're going to make up the money for the games.
It's like the PC market. It's or at least the Wintel market. It's the software. That's where you make all the money, right?
Yeah.
You buy a cheap little Chromebook or whatever, or what are those really tiny, what were we talking about last week? The really tiny mini laptops, right?
Remember the netbooks from a long time ago? Yes.
Yeah, and then you try to buy some video editing software and you spend thousands of dollars because they charge you like $150 every year for the upgrades, right? So it ends up being the software. So yeah, okay, so that's interesting. Yeah, the razor blade.
So you've got a friend who did a PhD, and so he has like a spreadsheet or something with all these business models?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, exactly. So first of all, he started, like dissecting all the business model patterns. Like, for example, I'm now in front of this table, like flat rate business model, franchising, freemium, cash machine, cross-selling, hidden revenue, pay-per-use, subscription, solution provider. No.
Wow, I need to see this spreadsheet. This sounds very valuable.
Robinhood, it's really cool. Robinhood. Yeah. No, you take it from the richer and give it to the poor.
Robinhood.
I don't know if we can apply that into IoT. Maybe you can think about that.
Maybe.
But we have a lot of crowdfunding, crowdsourcing, customer loyalty. No, this Amazon button. No, it's I don't think this is customer. I think it's more razor and blade, maybe the Amazon Dash, but it doesn't exist anymore. But yeah, you have the license business model, you have the luxury business model, no, with Apple devices or Google Nest devices and so on. The white label. Now, for example, there is like a supermarket, like a very big supermarket here in Europe called Lidl, that they for Christmas and probably for the Black Friday, they had this super cheap smart home device that probably is a white label solution from a Chinese smart home device manufacturer. So there are plenty of business models that can make your idea to succeed or to fail, depending on. The worst thing I heard about the previous business models I set up on the IoT is that you are more expensive than Netflix. Why should I pay that? So that's probably the worst thing I heard about my business model.
Right.
But I mean, I think it's important that if you have an idea on IoT or you're creating something, maybe you don't need to make a business model canvas, but to think a lot on these new business models. And if you are B2B or B2C, think a lot on that. If you're going B2B, think on what are your customers, how they usually pay. If they are used to pay OPEX, like every month, like a license, or they are more CAPEX, so they pay once and that's all. That's really relevant. If you are B2C, then you can innovate much more, I guess.
Yeah. Maybe you should talk about, maybe the models you had with the things.io, like your different pricing models or how you went to market, and did you have to change over time or with the market, or, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think that I succeed on the business models. I think that we were too cheap at some point, but we started with a fixed price per device per year, but we changed it to like a kind of a SaaS strategy with a specific amount of money per month. But then we were helping a lot our customers to design their business model, because usually we were helping companies to launch products into the market. So we were kind of helping like 4 or 5 companies to define their business model and how much they should charge to their customers. But the funny story is that most of our customers, they didn't sell directly to final customers. They were selling to distributors. And this is how we end up building tools for our customers that were selling to distributors. And sometimes these distributors were selling to other distributors. Like, okay, I'm selling to this company that will sell to the US, but maybe in the US, There is the Colorado company, the California distributor, the Colorado one, the Washington one. So and that gives you complexity, but on the other hand, you're giving tools to the company to build their business model.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like if you're a business that's pursuing some of these greenfield or white space markets, it's challenging to figure out, okay, what business model should I start off with, number one, but number two, should I continue to evolve that business model, right? Because you are kind of you're a pioneer. You're going into this new frontier. And I think that's the state that a lot of IoT companies are in right now, is they're trying to figure out what the frontier is. So this whole question of business model, it becomes a topic of evolution and adaptation, And so to sit there and say that, well, okay, there's all these different business models out there, pick one. I think one of the things that oftentimes is missing, and a lot of discussions I have around business model, is that this notion that it's not just about the mechanisms and the structures you use to generate revenue. It's about value. It really is the construct of the model that you use to deliver value to the customer. It just happens that there's a number of subcomponents, and you mentioned the canvas, right, which is a really great tool for articulating or even thinking through what your business model is. There are a number of different components, and oftentimes I hear people conflating, especially revenue model with business model. And so, I think there's a basic education that still needs to happen, and I think that's where you also need to be cautious about the term as you enter into discussions with whether it's a business partner, your employees, your leadership, or VCs that you're looking to get funding from, that you understand what they have in their own heads in terms of a construct or definition of business model. I've gotten in some of those weird conversations. Oh, wait a minute, what are you talking about? And we get into those conversations a hell of a lot more than we used to. But this just happens to be one of those things where it's just like cloud computing. It's like, well, okay, what do you mean? What are you talking about? You keep saying, well, we put it up in the cloud. It's like, well, it's like that moment in A Princess Bride when you have Vicini going, inconceivable, and then what's his name? My favorite character. My name is Inigo Montoya. That Inigo Montoya. He goes, no, I don't think that means what you think it means. It's kind of like that kind of moment. The Princess Bride moment.
Yeah, I hear you. Because you're right. You got the whole cloud consumption model. It's almost like the electricity meter on the side of your house spinning, right?
Yeah.
And so they're all like, oh, that's what it is. It's the service you're consuming it. It's consumption model for business, SaaS, whatever,
or they think it's just virtualized infrastructure, or
I've certainly been involved, in different organizations where we've gotten it wrong multiple times, or the business model is the same, the pricing model, or the combination of weird way how to price things was hard to get to the right place where customers could understand it. If I think both with early days around Azure IoT and AWS IoT Core, customers found it too complex. They found that there was too many different things. They wanted one price. Kind of like Marc's talking about. Customers want it to be simple. They want one price.
Yeah.
But instead they're like, well, we're going to charge you this much for data ingestion, and we're going to charge you this much for storage, and this much for
keep it simple.
Yeah. And so customers started, and they would you have to create this calculator on the website for the customer so they could try to figure out how much it was going to cost them every month. And it was a disaster. And customers rejected that because they were like, this is too hard. It's too complex.
Well, customers are not rejecting to go to AWS and deal with the hell calculator that they have. So, I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think they were the first ones to really make it kind of easy, and I think that's. I mean, it boils down to not just looking at how you make money, but tuning into what's valuable, and that really entails understanding, and even more importantly, anticipating, especially for new stuff, anticipating what the buyer needs or will want or what their preferences are. But I think maybe the more important thing now is to figure out what do they want that they don't know that they want, right?
Yeah.
Needs tend to be pretty obvious. It's how do you get people to understand what they want? And eventually they'll be able to, they will need it and they'll express it as a need. And that's, I think that whole Steve Jobs philosophy of not listening to the customer, even though everyone kind of thinks that is what Steve Jobs was preaching. It's like, no, you have to think beyond what they need. It's like, what will they want that we can then shape into something essential?
Yeah.
I think that's like that's the dilemma that IoT companies are facing. And there's several companies that I've advised already that have had that dilemma. I have to ask them, well, what's your business model and how well do you know your customer? And then there's the bigger picture of how well do you know the market, and do these massive numbers that you're showing me as your assumption for what the market opportunity is, do they make sense?
Right.
And if that doesn't work out, then you start to figure out, well, these guys need to do a bit more homework on the business model assumptions as well.
Yeah, you need to go to the first principles of why you would charge that, and sometimes you don't need to ask or to check what's the competition does. I don't think that's the right solution.
No, I totally agree. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially in white space, in white space domains or areas. Yeah, totally. Because everyone could be doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I certainly remember a big span of time when I was at Hitachi. We were doing Lumada, and gosh, trying to come up with the best business model and best pricing seemed almost harder than building the technology.
Yeah, absolutely.
It did,
Yeah.
and especially when we, from the very beginning decided we're not going to do just a typical build in the cloud deal. It was going to be, here's appliances, here's on-prem, here's server-looking things, because it's an industrial platform and it needed to work in air-gapped factories and weird places. And so you had people that looked at it differently. They looked at it like, if you go back to the 90s, the typical server licensing or CPU licensing that you saw for databases and servers and things like that. And there's a whole lot of people, when you talk to companies, if you're talking to the IT department, for instance, there's a whole lot of people who are running those things who lived through that time, right? And they remember that. And some of them feel more comfortable with that, or some kind of perpetual licensing model, versus the cloud, just consumption, pay as you go or whatever. And you know what? We got it wrong multiple times, and we had to keep changing. But we got it wrong with Azure IoT. I think we changed the way we did pricing probably 3 different major times, because we threw something out there, and customers like, we did per device. We did a combination of per device and messages per month or per day. And then I think at Microsoft, we finally settled on messages per day and didn't care about how many devices. Because if you think of your infrastructure, your technology, your stack, it doesn't care either. It doesn't know how many devices are, it's just about how many events, messages am I getting? And that's all you care about. And so at Microsoft, we finally got to messages per day. And then that worked for a while, but then we found some bigger customers that were doing way more than others. It would start to get too expensive. And so we had to come up with 3 different tiers of pricing based on messages per day for larger amounts and stuff like that. I just noticed in the news, our friends over at Microsoft just did an update to their IoT Central, where I think they're thinking about, when you think of LoRaWAN or Sigfox and NB-IoT and those, just a few messages per day. They came out with a new tier for IoT Central. If you're only sending a few messages per day, it was a dramatically lower price, as you might imagine. And it was funny though, because when I read the news, it looked like they were relating it back to devices. It was going to be under $1 per device per year, maybe, or something like that. I don't know.
Well, that's a lot, because if you want to charge $100 per device per year, you have to think, how much that company will need to charge a third-party company.
Yeah.
If they want to make like 50% on the top of that, no?
Yeah.
Or, I don't know how much, or maybe 100% on top of that. So someone else will need to pay $200 per year per that device. And maybe someone else will need to pay $250 per. So
no, you're right. But so they got it down to $1 or less than $1, I think. I've seen this with mobile operators who have tried to launch NB-IoT in the past several years. They are struggling to come up with the right pricing model.
Yeah.
Is it $5 per year per device or whatever it is, or plus I need you to pay however much money for the module, the cellular module or whatever, and because it's new for the mobile operators, this space, and they don't know pricing models, and what they think is a good amount turns out to be outrageously expensive at scale, and a customer could never afford it. I think people are finding their way.
Yeah. And you were talking just about the cloud pricing, but you need to add there the hardware, all the certifications, logistics, supply chain, so on. No, even the box, the enclosures, and so on. So it's not easy to have like a successful. I'm not sure if there is a successful IoT device that makes money.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm not sure if Nest it's a successful IoT device on a business model.
I don't know.
For example, Amazon Dash was not. They stopped the project.
Right. That's right.
As far as I know, these printers that are selling ink, they are not a successful business model project, for example.
Printers? No, HP was making, or it may even still be making a killing off of that business model. I mean, toner has always been more expensive than gold, and they've had their whole little IoT thing going on where, they monitor how much ink or toner is left.
Do you have data?
Huh?
Do you have data?
Do I have data of whether or not they're doing well?
Exactly.
I have to look into it. This is just case studies from a while back, but
real data, not
data. Now we have iPads.
Show me your data.
Show me the data.
I'll look it up. I'll show it. I'll share it on our thread.
But I don't know the video game industry neither. If they are making, probably yes, no, but but that's not IoT. But I'm not sure about an IoT device that has been really successful. Even I'm thinking on the new Chinese cameras. How are they called? That are super cheap, and they give you like 1 year of free storage or 1 month of free storage. They cost $20.
Yeah. Right. Well, I think that's where the analyst firms were pretty right in that most of the IoT value is going to be realized through services, right? Not the device. The device, I mean, that's a commodity game. The connections too. I mean, we're probably finding out through all these early rollouts of NB-IoT and other low power networking services that either people really don't want to connect all those billions and billions of devices that people forecasted that everybody would want to connect.
Yeah, but I don't agree with that vision, because then we get into this position where a company makes everything, makes from the device to the service.
No.
And then that usually doesn't work.
No, I don't think so. It's not necessary. That's why everyone keeps talking about ecosystems. And whenever you see a pitch deck, they have this one slide that has a crap ton of logos on it and say, look at our ecosystem, right? And so the guys who are going to win out are going to be the ones that can actually make that one slide realistic in some sense. Most of it is just vapor stuff. You know, you can have a partnership with somebody and say, hey, let's sign a little partnership agreement, have 0 deals going or 0 value being channeled through that relationship. Right. So, but that's the tricky thing, right? But and that doesn't mean the smaller players don't have an opportunity to tap into that service value, to what you were saying before. In fact, you know what, that's the thing that you can continue to, that's completely portable and interoperable, meaning as long as the people who are doing the advisory work know the domain, know the technology and somewhat the solution, and then you can switch the team out. Right. And that goes back to some of the topics that we talked about around open technologies, right? The stuff that you guys are doing at Balena. As long as this stuff is the stuff that you leave behind is understandable by the next team that comes in or the consultant that comes in to work on the upgrade or whatever, that's okay. And I think that's where open, interoperable, all this stuff kind of works out for the smaller guys, right? And in fact, I think that might even be a great value proposition that people use to explain to customers why open is a cool thing. You really don't have to be attached to the SAPs or the Amazons or the Microsofts of the world. You can, at any time decide to switch a vendor, and then that person can look at the stuff and continue to evolve your solution.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I hate more in the industry, this lock-in.
I know.
Situations where you get into, you start partnering with a company and then you cannot get rid of that company, even if they don't work or they change the business model or whatever.
But I think the smaller guys really need to be armed with some powerful value propositions that can counter some of the value points that a larger player can bring to the table, right? Because there's always going to be some degree of consolidation, even in the open realm. I always point to Red Hat. Red Hat's a big player in the Linux universe. And the reason why they're big is there is a demand for big integrated and enterprise class, carrier class, industrial IoT class. So there's going to be that demand for assurance as well as scale. But I think well-formed partnerships, if you can evolve those into quote unquote ecosystems that can match that kind of scale and provide that kind of assurance, then I think you're pretty cool.
Hey Mark, you may have mentioned this before, or maybe in another discussion, but I think you mentioned it earlier today also. Back when at the things.io, did you find yourself and your team doing a lot of consulting work at all with customers? Or was it just, here's the product?
Yeah, it was mostly, here's the product. But on the other hand, some customers say, that product fits on what we need. But then we need some extra things. And we were doing, not consulting, but doing some professional services, creating new widgets or new, we had this cloud code, to make some calculations for their data and so on. Okay. So we were doing some professional,
Okay. Because I always see, we may have all talked about this before, but in the past I've seen these pie charts that shows who's making all the money in IoT. And it is like professional services, SIs, people like that. They are not the creators of any of the IoT technology, but it turns out they're the ones who are actually implementing the solutions for customers.
Right.
And through billable hours, they're the ones actually making the most money.
I don't have any doubt that the integrators will be the winners of the IoT. So
No,
I
it
mean,
depends.
everything goes through integrators. So all the big projects go through integrators.
I think you just made a bold, powerful statement right there.
Yeah.
You know that they're going to be the winners, and so that's interesting for us to think about if we believe that. Because there's so many people building technology from device to middleware to AI to platforms, and then there's open source, and then there's integrators who are doing the work, and billing.
I don't. Yeah, but I don't agree with that, and hopefully this is a hopeful statement for Marc, who I know is such an advocate for the little guys. I don't necessarily think so, and I'll tell you why. The thing is, oh man, I've lost my train of thought. This is horrible.
Meanwhile, you got it
live.
If you go to the last episode, I explain why working with integrators sometimes suck.
Well, no, okay, no, I came back.
That's
back.
why.
Oh my God!
And we're back. Folks.
Thank you, Lord. I'm not completely absent-minded. No. The hopeful thing is what we talked about. Last episode, 70%, if not more, of IoT projects fail. It's not because the devices or the connections fail, right? It's because the bigger part of that value pie chart, right, or the revenue pie chart has failed. I think really people need to kind of connect the dots on that. And we talked about POC hell a few weeks back, how you're always wallowing in, we see so many projects wallowing POC hell. I mean, the thing is that, again, I think there's too much of a learning process that's happening at the expense of the customer, the end market customer. And so, and what I've noticed is probably the biggest disconnect, and going back to what I mentioned, I think it was last episode, this knowledge gap. The people who are the service providers don't necessarily either know the domain or the technology, right? And so a lot of these SIs that traditionally did ERP stuff, all of a sudden IoT is a big buzzword, and they start, making, people who used to do SQL, all of a sudden, OT, AI guys, the thing is that they don't necessarily know the technologies that are being built and tools that are being used in at that particular space. So there is hope. And if the smaller guys, and they tend to have a much better hands-on grasp on the devices and the connectivity technologies and all and the domain, that is a huge opportunity. And you'll eventually probably get bought out by a bigger player.
So I convinced you.
Yeah, but if the leader of that company is someone like Marc, who has a chip on his shoulder against big guys, then he can create this wonderful ecosystem that can truly challenge the big guys, and that can happen.
What do you think? What do you think an open source business model in IoT would look like?
Friggin' Red Hat. I mean, that's what Rakuten's doing with the RCP, right? I mean,
what is Red Hat? Sorry, what is Red Hat doing on IoT?
No, they're not. What I'm saying is, if you were to sit there and look at a simile, right, open, it's literally doing something like that. So how do you address?
Do you give away the IoT platform middleware? Do you give that away for free?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then support and then have a service business model to make that implementation enterprise class. Or weave in some of the for like the critical applications and implementations, make it industrial class, because that's actually what's needed right now, and that's what the SIs are trying to do. It's just they're not very good at it either. And if they were, what would we see? 90% success rate in IoT projects, right? I mean, look, I'm not making this stuff up. It's the consulting companies that are going out and finding out that all these projects are failing. It's not Leonard Lee saying that the SI suck.
No, actually,
20% failure rate, that sucks. That's horrible. That's not how I used to run projects. I'd go insane if 70% of my projects failed when I was doing those big implementations. I'd go nuts. I figure I suck at this stuff. Sorry.
No problem.
We tell it like it is, right? I mean, that's what our show is about.
No, I was going to say. I was going
What were you
to
going to
say.
say, Marc?
No, that open source is one of the business models that you can have. So yeah, as Leonard was describing, so companies releasing like open source projects, and then they have their industrial or the premium or most of the companies. So for example, I know DataStax. I know them because we used to use the open source Cassandra database, but they have then the not open source database. Then you need to pay them, you need to get certified, and then you need to get into different business models and funnels that they have. If you want the non-open source database, but then the open source one, it's great, and you can build a product from that. Or for example, at Balena, we also have you can have all the open source suite if you want. So you can Balena OS, that it's the operating system, it's open source. Balena Engine, it's not open source, but it's free. And then you have Open Balena, so you can run, you can manage, you can have like a state-of-the-art device management tool with open source systems. If you don't want, so if you want to pay, so you can change the Open Balena for Balena Cloud, and then you can start paying. But you can build all your product with the Open Balena and the open source tool. So I see a lot of successful open source companies, some of them having products targeting the IoT. And I think this is it's getting more fashionable, this open source business model. Yeah. I think it's really interesting as well.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is, you mentioned your friend who's doing the PhD study on business models. I've done a lot of the work in this area as well while I was a consultant doing this business transformation work. And I'll tell you right now, there aren't as many. There are endless numbers of business models that you can think of and construct. Okay, so going out, and I think it's a little bit of a futile exercise to go and try to catalog them all, because number one, there's always new ones being introduced. But one thing that I've observed is there are a pretty finite number of archetypes. And the trick is to understand those archetypes, but then associate them accurately with whatever that you're looking at and whatever you're trying to design, right? Because there's just some, like going back to first principles, there's just some fundamental patterns and ways that you can engineer a business model, or even analyze a business model. And so I don't know if there's really a open source business model. It probably is a manifestation of a number of different converged archetypes. So something to think about. But because, taking the Red Hat model and then copying it and then applying it in, let's say, in the IoT world might not exactly work that great. There's nuances, right? So, and then also they're in software. I think one of the things people get completely confused, and I think maybe ORAN and Open RAN group is maybe making this mistake, is thinking that software is the same as system. Something like ORAN, which is hardware plus software, that's a totally different dynamic. And so there are these little nuances where you need to be mindful of them. Otherwise you make one of those mistakes. And by the way, Rob, I love how you don't say that you guys failed. You made mistakes and you learn from the mistakes. That's important. You know how much I hate this whole, worship failure culture that we have. Right. I really freaking hate it. You made mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. It's not okay to fail. It really isn't, because there's consequences to failing. Right. Mistakes, sure, there are consequences to mistakes, but those are what you can learn from before you decide, I give up.
You learn from your customers, and you find out, hey, this didn't work. Let's try this. This didn't work. Let's try it again. And you keep getting back up and dusting yourself off, and you get back in the fight, and you keep trying. Yeah, absolutely.
final words, guys. We're up on time. Unless you wanted to say something else, Rob. I'm out of coffee, so.
You're out of coffee. I know.
Yeah. It gets bad when that happens.
But back to just business models, and I know I've said this one before. Which the most remarkable one for me was just the Hitachi Rail thing for UK. Being able to deliver trains as a service because of our confidence in Lumada and our,
the data.
It was the data and our confidence, and we built what we could do with the data. But a lot of people talk a good game about applying SaaS models to machines, to hardware, right? Which is hard to do. But gosh, we would not have probably won that deal, which is a multi-billion-dollar deal for trains for the whole country, if everyone else showed up saying, "Here's how much money we want you to pay us to build all these trains," and being able to have a SaaS model for hardware because we believed in our IoT technology and our analytics, most importantly, really, was such a game changer, and it made it real.
Because you were kind of a bank, so you were putting the money. A startup cannot do that. I mean, you need a lot.
You're right. You're absolutely right. A startup cannot do that, and so it's not fair. The only giant mega companies, because you're right, Hitachi had to use its own money to build all those trains and pay for it itself like a bank, and then get the money later, monthly SaaS, subscription for trains, right?
Yeah.
And not everybody can do that. That's a good point.
Yeah, and think about the transformation, how big of a transformation that was from a business model standpoint. Yeah, that's incredible.
But if you're able to do it, it's a great lesson in how we won a big deal.
Yeah.
Hitachi has no presence in Europe for trains, and how do you beat Siemens or Alstom, And so, it's a cool story, but you're right. You also have to have a lot of money.
Yeah, and it's tricky because your return of investment can be in short. So let's imagine let's make some fake numbers, but let's imagine that it costs $1 million, the project, and then you say, let's charge them $1,000 per month. So in 1,000 months, we get the return of investment. But they will know that it costs maybe Siemens or Alstom or whoever offers 50,000. I don't know.
Yeah.
So your fact, then you have to, maybe they tell you, we are thinking about that. Maybe if you do 20% discount per month, like, okay, what? So you are getting like 20 years extra time, to get the return of investment of that project. That's crazy.
Right. That's true. Yeah.
Amazing.
So for me, the SaaS, it's you need volume. If not, it's impossible. So if you see that into a strategy where you want to convert all the train industry into a SaaS model, that makes sense. But just having one or two trains, I don't think that the return of investment makes sense in short mid-term.
Yeah. So interesting. Just the subscription, the SaaS model for everything. I know startups feel like when they're trying to raise money, there's no way they could go to a VC and say, I'm going to make a product and I'm going to sell it, and the customer's going to pay me one time, and then they own the product. Venture capitalists are like, get out of my office.
Get out of here.
That's interesting. I think, and that's why startups have to think of a business model as an evolution. So where are you going to start, and don't be fixated on where you want to end up or what your, let's say, longer term target state is. You might even be wrong in your assumptions about the target state, but come up with something that is going to work, and that's not always that easy. A lot of people get it wrong, and just be ready to change it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like the big takeaway, right?
Pivot.
You pivot. Yeah, exactly. All right, guys.
Scared to pivot. Yeah, one last thing, if you want.
Okay, go ahead. It's gonna be the longest episode ever.
No way. No, related with business models, actually.
Okay, cool.
Lena, we are doing a live coding session on YouTube showing how to. Well, we are building a Balena hub that it's a marketplace for edge IoT applications. So we are creating a tool to enable third-party companies to create business models on the top of this technology, and to make the edge, and the IoT, more scalable, and helping more companies to succeed in an easy way. So it's really cool as well to see companies creating these tools for free for companies to try to succeed faster.
That's
awesome.
Cool.
Awesome. So check it out. Everyone check it out. All right, guys. So to all of our IoT Coffee Talk listeners and viewers, thanks for joining us. And remember to hit that like button, subscribe, and follow us at www.iotcoffeetalk.com, and follow us on Twitter as well. Comment below. Did I miss anything? Where's Stephanie when we need her?
Come see the new IoT Coffee Talk dance on TikTok.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. Featuring.
But you need
Rob
to subscribe
Tiffany.
first. Subscribe.
Yeah, you have to. Yeah, that was fun, guys. Take care. We'll talk to you next week.
I'm looking forward to see your new pajama next week.
I can just get up right now.
Yeah.
All right, take care, guys.
Bye-bye.
All right.